All right, let's go ahead and get started. So thrilled you all are here with us today. I'm Justin Clifford. I work at Bereave. I will be your host today. Loss Leaders is a program really centered around how companies could and we think should step up when loss occurs in the lives of their employees. This is our third Loss Leaders event, so 3 weeks in a row. So we're pretty much virtual event experts at this point. I'm kidding. We've already got another 6 programs booked and working to fill each week of 2024. So plan on Loss Leaders becoming just a part of your week if you'll have us, usually around noon Eastern or as close to that as we can get on Wednesday every week. The reason that we're doing this, Bereave is on a mission to really help companies ensure best-in-class bereavement response for their employees. In that pursuit, we encounter some amazing companies and incredible people throughout the world that really can bring so much education and deep insights to business leaders that are really working to build a more compassionate and empathetic workplace. So we thought, hey, why hog all that? Let's get them in front of the world as much as we can. It's all part of starting a difficult conversation that we hope becomes the norm. And because of that, we designed Bereave to be a low cost, low lift, and low implementation platform so that we can really help companies start that conversation, which is a big part of why we're running Loss Leaders, and to help leaders understand the role that grief plays in the lives of our teammates and how it shows up in the walls of their workplace, or the virtual walls these days. So if you are a company leader on this, joining us today, or are in HR, an HR leader, and want to know what we're up to, want to demo, a walkthrough, a chit chat, we'll put a link in the comments to book some time with us, and we'd love to do that. All right, enough of my nonsense. You're here for Danny Goldberg. Danny is an entrepreneur and speaker. At 20, Danny lost his father, Mark, and at the age of 25, he lost his mother, Sharon. Each of these events put Danny really in the driver's seat of his own life path. But the turns he took were much different at each step. Really learning some serious life lessons, including the biggest one, which is how to live a life worth living. Okay. Now Danny's on a mission to help people live the life that they want. He provides keynotes and, coming soon, workshops that are going to help the workplace become a place of care. Today we talk to Danny about loss, about living life, about how work and careers fit into the life worth living, and how companies can really support their teammates in a deeper way. Danny, welcome to Loss Leaders.
Thanks so much for having me, Justin. Excited to be here, and yeah, love everything you're up to at Bereave. So just so stoked to be here with you today.
Awesome. Thanks, man. Chat is open, by the way. We'll monitor questions the best we can as we go. We'll also plan to get you out of here by a quarter till at the very latest, so you can refresh before meetings at the top of the hour. So without further ado, let's get rolling. So Danny, this is one of those completely just random and becoming more and more regular, like serendipitous social media connections, you and I. You created a post a couple of months ago about the anniversary of losing your mom. Someone happened to tag Bereave, and you and I end up on the phone, and now in like this perpetual support of one another since then, with a lot of opportunities to work together beyond today that we're already discussing, which is super exciting. We're so grateful to know you, first of all, and really thank you so much for your generosity in being here today.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, that's the beautiful thing with social media. Sometimes it like really works out where you connect with amazing people doing incredible things, and you're off to the races. So it's always nice to take the LinkedIn love to a real authentic connection like this one.
Yeah, it's fantastic. It's been a big part of our growth and our pursuit as well, and the amount of connections that have occurred from the digital world have been really astounding, and we've been very lucky. So hey, let's get started. When I learned a little bit about your story, there was a moment at the age of 14 that you talked about where your dad inspired you professionally at the age of 14 and sort of led you down this path. Can you talk a little bit about the inspiration that came from him in that moment?
Yeah, absolutely. So my dad and I certainly had a really unique relationship. Growing up, my dad would always come home from work, and my dad was an industrial designer by trade. And he used to always tell me some version of, no matter what, don't lose sight of pursuing the dreams that are most important to you. And one time, my family and I were on a family vacation, and my dad and I were sitting in a hot tub, and I turned to my dad and I said, "Hey, Dad, how do I build something great in life?" And my dad thought for a second, and he said, "Find what you love, and you'll build something amazing." And at that time, I was working at a local boxing gym, training for my first amateur boxing fight. And right away, almost right away, I said, "I love boxing. We should sell boxing gloves." And about 15 minutes later, we came up with a company name, logo. And when I got home from that trip, we placed an order for with a manufacturer overseas in Thailand. And a couple of months later, I had a couple of boxes show up with boxing gloves. And from there, I was off to the races. 14-year-old me was in business. And every weekend from that point forward, my parents, I didn't have a permit yet. My parents would drive me around all over New York, and I'd go to local gyms selling boxing gloves. And it evolved into a full-blown business where I ended up traveling all over the US to different gyms, different trade shows, and built a combat sports equipment brand that was used by a lot of fighters in the UFC, world champion boxers. And um, yeah, I had such a unique experience with my dad, because not only did he enable me and empower me to go and pursue this dream of mine, but in many ways, while he wasn't running or operating the business with me, he was there right by my side from beginning to end. Um, uh, hey, let's go to Vegas, let's try out this expo, let's sell the gloves. You got to go meet with this fighter, meet with that fighter. And yeah, I feel so grateful that I had that experience with him, where he was really empowering me from such a young age to pursue the things most important to me.
Yeah, it was just like my high school upbringing. Created no, I did not create a business. I didn't do anything remotely close to as cool as that. So you're working through your teenage years with this business that your dad has inspired you to at least pursue. And you sort of hit on it a little bit there about your dad not running the business, but very much encouraging you and supporting you along the way. Can you say a little bit about what really working on the business did for the relationship with your dad?
Yeah. So, not necessarily so much working on the business. It was just this like joint passion around boxing. My dad wasn't such a big boxing fan growing up, but through this, like I loved it so much, he ended up loving it. My dad was a big overweight dude, and he had this big belly, and he started taking me to. He signed up at the gym with me, and we would spar. We'd go into the boxing gym, and it would be father versus son. He'd put on a headgear, I'd put on a headgear, and we'd spar. And through it, we'd go to these different gyms, and we had this bond that we really connected over. And as I look back, like what a unique experience. And even as the business grew, we ended up going to visit the manufacturer who made a lot of our equipment in Thailand. And we went to a local gym in Thailand. We stayed there for 5 days, living out of the Thai boxing
Wow.
gym. We stayed on a bunk bed. I slept on the top. He was on the bottom. And we stayed there training twice a day. And like when I look back, I feel so lucky to have had that experience with my dad, because we had this shared love that we were able to bond over. And boxing and business, the combo of the two became like the thing that was really a bridge in terms of just how we connected and what we were able to connect and bond over. But I remember one of his birthdays, I gave him a picture of both of us holding some boxing gloves. And I told him, you gave me the greatest gift you could give anyone, which is enabling someone to pursue their dreams. And that was really important to my dad. And perhaps also just a little bit about my dad's own story. Prior to my dad going down his career path as industrial designer, he had his own design agency for some time. And I have two older sisters, and once they were born, he decided to put the business to the side and get a job that was more stable. He was starting a family at the time, and he always thought he'd come back to building his own business one day. So he kind of like put it aside and said, someday I'll get back to it. And obviously, we're here having this conversation. That's not how the story ended for him. So I really believe deep down that the pursuit of his own childhood dreams and things that were important to him there was a lot of like what if and Sundays there that were created in his own mind. And for me, I think that's why he really helped push me to go and pursue the things most important to me at a young age.
Yeah, yeah, no, I love it. I mean, I'm definitely guilty of falling in the trap of saying, "Hey, when this happens, then we can go do that," right? Or someday, or for us with kids, we say things like, "Hey, when the kids get a little older, we can go do this," or getting caught up in that not today world. And it's important to think about the future, but also what are we doing today and why are we doing it, right? Super super important lesson to learn. You got to learn it as a teenager. I learned it actually probably just today as a 43-year-old man. So you're a little bit further ahead, which I love. Thank you for sharing that. So you're working through high school, right? And eventually into college, and then you turn 20 and things come to a halt. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, so going into my junior year of college, I'd actually just transferred, and I was so excited for my parents to come visit me at my new college, and I was very plugged into the entrepreneurship ecosystem. I was excited for my parents to come see like my new professors, meet my new friends. And when my parents arrived, my dad was in like a big coat, and he was really cold, and he looked different. He looked sick, and they ended up cutting the trip short. Turned around, he said he didn't feel well, and they went home. But instead of going home, they went straight to the hospital. And about a week later, my dad called me and he let me know that he'd been diagnosed with cancer. Um, and seven months later, he passed away. And over those 7 months, I was away at school for a good amount of time. And every time I'd come home, he was progressively weaker and sicker. And I was really sheltered though from the experience. Like, I never thought that my dad was going to die. I kind of thought that, hey, he's kind of like a cold or he's sick, but he's going to be okay. And yeah, when he died, my world turned upside down. I was completely just in complete shock. I really was in just complete disbelief just because I really never thought he was going to die.
Yeah, totally. Thank you for sharing that. I think about the feelings that when people experience close loss like this, the mental toll, the physical toll that it can take, and then I start obviously thinking about how that shows up in regular everyday life. Can you talk a little bit about how, especially in the first few weeks, how his passing really impacted those first few weeks of trying to manage everything that you had going on, from a business to school to being 20 years old? Like what do those first few weeks look like and feel like?
Yeah, well, I think, I should say I feel like grief is so unique in the sense that no loss is truly the same as everyone experiences grief differently. And for me, my own reaction, I was in complete shock. It took me a long time to process that my dad was dead, that he was gone, and that this was going to become a new normal. And a lot of people had told me who had experienced significant loss at a young age that like uh, I would one day be able to feel happiness again and move forward. But in the moment, I mean, your life comes to a screeching halt, like you mentioned, and it's pretty much exactly what I experienced. I signed up for. I started seeking like professional help and a therapist almost immediately for the first time in my life, and really was trying to find outlets to be able to navigate and figure out like, what I was experiencing and have a safe space to talk about my feelings. And I think when I look back, having a community that I was able to lean on, but getting professional help and having a therapist that I was able to talk about what I was feeling was tremendous. Because following my dad's death, it was hard to even just say my dad died. But this is a decade later and years of internal work.
Sure.
We're not able to communicate everything that happened, but in the moment, it wasn't so easy.
Sure. Sure. So the first year of loss is often referred to as a year of firsts, right? Acclimating to really a new life. And I think what I hear people say sometimes is like a life without, but in actuality just feels like it is a new life, right? Um, so these year of firsts, and it's important to know about. I think the reason I'm bringing this up, and the reason that we're talking today, is because in the workplace we're often given 3 to 5 days of time off, and we expect employees to return and go full throttle on day 6, right? Not really acknowledging, understanding how grief works, and how it can show up in unexpected moments. And that adjustment to a new life is not a 3 to 5 day process, and ultimately impacts work. So can we talk a little bit about your year of firsts, for after losing your dad, the things that started to show up, and the way things popped up in your world from a grief perspective?
Yeah. Yeah. It's funny hearing you say that. There's almost like a little bit of like, in my head, it's almost a little bit comical just to be expected to show up back at work a week later, 14 days later, 20 days later, and expect that uh, you can go back at it and focus on work. I mean, your life, like you said, comes to a screeching halt, and life is never the same. And it is really hard to pick yourself back up and to just like show up, to go back to some form of normalcy. And uh, that was my own experience. Some people, maybe it's helpful to go back to some routine faster than others and jump back into it. But for me, it was really hard. I mentioned it was my junior year. My dad died in June, and it was my summer in between my junior year going into my senior year. And I was so excited my junior year to be at this new college, just to give you like a sense of how much had changed. And after my dad had died, the last place I wanted to go back to was college. I wanted to drop out. I wanted to go help take care of my mom, help provide for her, and just be with her. So life had changed in a big way. It was really difficult to carry on to go back to like what for so many, people are like college, best time of your life. Senior year,
Sure.
I'm sure when I look back, there was plenty of happiness and a lot that I'm grateful for as I look back. But it was the last place I wanted to be. And I know for so many who go back to work a week later, even a month later, it is really hard to go back and be in that position.
Yeah, yeah. I couldn't. I mean, college overwhelmingly can be a very fun and enjoyable time, and having to go back with this new life, at a at a new school too, had to have been incredibly different. Were there moments, I people who haven't experienced close loss, again, very very reflective of how the workplace treats close loss, feel like, hey, time goes on, you get better, right? um but I've also heard a lot of people talk very similarly in the way you just phrased it, in that everybody's path, everybody's journey is unique. Some people talk about certain things popping up in their life that trigger moments of deep grief, um uh, in unexpected paths. Were there moments of kind of unexpected grief or unexpected uh, mental strain, because of Mark's passing, that popped up in that first year?
Yeah, of course. I mean, there are so many moments. There's not just a
Mhm.
moment. There are so many moments that come to mind, and yeah, it doesn't need to be like a big thing. It could be the smallest thing, and I'll just use this as an example. Um, as it relates to college, and you can make the same example for work, but you show up at just experience a loss, and a week later, 2 weeks later, you're back at school or in the office, and you hear someone complaining about something that feels so mundane and so insignificant. And for me, like something like that in the college world, that would be like someone complaining about how this class is so hard, or I'm flunking this class, or I got a bad grade, or in the workplace, this person's bothering me, or dealing with something, or too much going on. Um, that is like that could feel like someone is shaking you at your soul. Um, of just how are we dealing with this annoying, frustrating thing? I just experienced such a significant loss, and it's hard to hear sometimes those things, like they shake your insides, as opposed to something normally where you'd be like, oh yeah, whatever, it's no big deal. Something like as small as that can really, um, it can stop you in your tracks and make you feel like it can make you feel more isolated and make you feel that no one understands what you're experiencing in the moment.
Yeah, I mean, you painted a very vivid picture, at least for me. The shaking your insides, the loneliness that can bring. I mean, that's pretty clear. I mean, I still don't know what it feels like, but for people who, I mean, knowing what you just said, and the way you framed that, can probably help me as a manager of people in the workplace, or as a friend to people. Right. I mean, there are a lot of ways that empathy can show up, and this is certainly one. So I really appreciate you sharing that vivid of detail, because it does help us create empathy, whether it's in the workplace or with a loved one or supporting friends. That's a pretty vivid picture for us.
Ye-
So go ahead. Sorry.
Oh yeah, I was gonna say it doesn't need to be. I think sometimes with grief, people think it's like the big things. It's the anniversaries,
Mhm.
the birthdays, the holidays. It doesn't need to be that. And I think
Mhm.
the closer, and it's not always like, sometimes it's the smallest thing. It's a scent. It's someone says
Mhm.
something, and you feel this. You're brought back to a moment in time, and you really can feel the person and the loss that you're experiencing. So it doesn't need to
Mhm.
be like this grand thing, and then it, it could be just such a small thing like that that can set you off, and, and make you start experiencing whatever it is you're feeling as it relates to your own grief
Mhm.
journey.
Yeah. Wow. That's great. Thank you for sharing that. Um, so you're working through you're working through college. You graduate. Like, can you talk a little bit about what happens next over the next 4 or 5 years or so?
Yeah, so similar to what I mentioned before, like I college was the last place I wanted to be. All I wanted to do
Mhm.
was drop out to go help take care of my mom. At the time, I was building this business as well, and I ended up selling my boxing glove business when I was 21 years old. And I had this idea, like I really, after my dad died, I redefined the way that I viewed success. And I went from building this thing that I love to, if I can make more money and build something that's more successful, I'll ultimately become happier. And as a result, I'll be able to provide for my mom. And that was a big driving force of it. So I ended up building a new agency, and it took off way faster. It was a way better business. And I kind of just threw myself into my work. And as I mentioned, some people, they'll lean into their work and that'll be a great distraction. And for others, maybe they'll want nothing to do with their work. And for me, at that time, I threw myself into my work, and somewhere along the lines, a couple of years out, I realized um, I didn't want to just build a career. I wanted to build a life, but I was terrified of making any changes because I had a good thing going. And I started to tell myself that same narrative of, yeah, someday I'll make these changes that I want, but not today. I have a good thing going. So that sort of became my life for the next couple of years.
Yeah. Yeah. So you go heads down. It sounds like just through everything you had with uh knowing that you wanted to provide for your mom, and the beginning of this new life for you. You just went heads down.
Yes,
Yeah.
completely threw myself into my work, and it worked until it didn't, but it served me well at the time.
Sure. Sure. So you're working on this new business, and uh 5 years from Mark's passing, you look up and you're staring more adversity in the face. More adversity is staring you in the face. How about that? Uh, can you talk a little bit about that adversity?
Yeah, so I along the way, um, right after my dad died, just to go backwards for a second, I started volunteering at
Mhm.
a nonprofit experience camps, which is a free 1 week camp for kids that have lost a loved one. And this is like my fifth year going. And I just finished up volunteering, and when I came home, I went back to my house, and I was so excited to tell my mom about the week that I just experienced and the kids' lives who I had impacted. And I woke up early that morning, and I went down onto my living room couch. And I'm sitting there waiting for my mom to come downstairs. And I thought it was a little bit weird that like I was up. My mom normally woke up relatively early. So I thought it was weird that she wasn't up yet. I didn't think much of it. And my mom came into the room. She was wearing a big orange sweatshirt and baggy green sweatpants. And she sat down on the couch to me and she's like, "How was camp?" I told her, "Amazing. I can't wait to tell you all about it." And she said, "I have to talk to you about something." And she grabbed my hands and she let me know that she'd been diagnosed with cancer. Um, she promised she was going to be okay. She kept saying, "This isn't going to be like that. I'm going to be okay." And at the time, they didn't know what type of cancer she had yet. Um, and I just started bawling in her lap. And 2 days later, she checked into the hospital, and she never checked out. She was there for about 2 months until she ultimately passed away. But um, life changed the second she checked into the hospital.
Yeah. Can you say more?
Yeah. So it was a very different experience from when my dad passed. For one, like having already experienced my dad passing 5 years before, and being a little bit, my parents sheltered me a little bit for my dad's experience. I knew the second my mom checked into the hospital that um, this was going to be, I knew that even the best case scenario, this was not going to be a happy ending. I knew that um, my mom had a very, very rare cancer and that the odds of surviving were slim to none. Um, and I was more aware of what was really going on. And through that, I think I was able to have conversations with my mom that I wasn't able or capable of having with my dad at the time about life, about how to live uh, a life that I want to live and changes I wanted to make in my life. And there were so many little things that happened as a result. We were able to have these like deep, meaningful conversations that, quite frankly, maybe we wouldn't have ever had if my mom was still alive. But just about like life and love. Um, at the time, this is a little bit of a tangent, but at the time, my now wife, it was someone my mom adored, and my mom always was like, "What are you waiting for to tell her how you feel?" And I always had feelings for this again, my now wife, but we were just friends at the time. I said, "You know what, Mom, you're right. I need to tell her how I felt." And I ended up telling um, my now wife, that I've had feelings for a while. My mom was sick, so there were all these little things that happened that created these catalysts for me in my life around getting hyper intentional and how and where I wanted to spend my limited time. And I think the thing that really happened was once my mom was diagnosed, I started to realize there are no guarantees in life. Life is such a gift, it is so fragile. Who's to say that I'll be here next year or in 10 years from now? I need to do the things that are important to me today and not someday. And that was really the big catalyst for me.
Sure. Yeah. So you've already been through one loss, so you're informed about, hey, this is what things could feel like, going from having no idea to losing your dad, being informed just through your emotions and working on yourself. How is the passing of your mom, Sharon? How is that different?
Yeah, I think that I was I was more experienced with grief at that point, where I was able to actually process and feel what I was feeling. Or with my dad, I really, as I mentioned, I signed up with a therapist right away. And when my dad died, I wasn't able to like even connect the dots of like, oh, I'm feeling X. It was so difficult for me to say my dad died. Like, that took a lot of work to be able to just say my dad died. And when my mom died, it was so much easier to talk about what I was feeling and being able to peel back the layers of the onion in the sense of being vulnerable around other people and just sharing what I was feeling. I know it might sound a little bit simple, but
Sure.
it's really hard in your most vulnerable state to to just express what it is you're feeling when you lose someone significant.
Mhm. Totally. And being able to recognize those feelings, I think is a huge component of being able to help yourself, probably being able to help others. You're volunteering at experience camps, right? You are probably helping those children work through a lot of the things that they are experiencing and don't know how to name. They don't know how to understand what they are, but and don't even know how to name those feelings. Um, and so you've thrown yourself into this life, this work life. You lose your mom, and then you're kind of starting over in that down that grief journey, a new grief journey, not even starting over but a new one. I'm curious, like you look up and you've talked to your dad in the past about living a life worth living, and you've talked to your mom about it. How does that change, like, Danny, and the way you were going heads down into this work? Did you look up and have any sort of realization about that work and what it meant after your mom passed, and how you wanted to approach that part of your life?
Yeah, so it was absolutely 100%. It wasn't in real time that like I had these conversations with my mom. In the moment, I was just so focused on like being present with her um, while she was in the hospital. But it was after the fact that like I was able to reflect on what I had just experienced and the conversations we had. And I realized, I need to make changes in my life. I have so many things on my list of uh, changes that I want to make and things I want to go and do, and I can't wait for some unknown time in the future. I'm going to make the changes today, and that was really the catalyst. And as I mentioned, the big question for me that I really sat with and reflected on was knowing that my time is limited as well. How and where do I want to spend my limited time? And for me, the big overarching thing was I wanted to go and build a life rich in experiences, a life that is holistically successful for me, and not just build a career. And that's what I did. I went and told my now wife that I had feelings for, which is a crazy story in of itself. And today we're married. I left my business to pursue work of impact and speaking within organizations. And truly, I believe that the world is heading in this direction. More and more people are looking to build a life and not just a career. And I think that workplaces have to adapt and shift the way that they lead to meet people where the world is going, to support people with that. And I think that, like, for me, my mom passing was the big catalyst and the big realization that, like,
Mhm.
oh, if I'm only going to build on my career, what a miss in terms of building a life.
Sure. You mentioned something there interesting about a business, about businesses heading in that direction, a direction of empathy and compassion and understanding the whole person. At least that's kind of how I read between the lines. Um, uh, how can businesses do that? Like, how do businesses support? Well, let me ask it this way: what is the role that the workplace can play in helping people create the life instead of just a career?
Yeah, I think it comes down to uh, the leadership level in terms of supporting the whole person. And
Mhm.
what I mean by that, one of the easiest things I think all leaders can do is look at what they do as building depth with their people. And what I mean by that is understanding who the person is and what's important to them and supporting them in their pursuits of that thing or their life, and not just, hey, come do your job and do XYZ and I'm going to help you in your career. How do I support you in building your life? And depth, what depth is to me is it is an understanding of what's important to that person, deep within. And there's a difference between surface level, uh, knowing that Justin likes to run, versus knowing Justin did a marathon, was training for a marathon. And as a leader, you are able to empower, support, and be there for that person. And as the individual, they know whether Justin or the leader knows, or the person knows, whether they feel that support and Justin actually cares about their people. versus, oh yeah, Justin knows that I run, but he doesn't really give a care. He just wants me to come in and do what I need to do. So I think that there's a tremendous difference there. And I think that is more and more the way the world needs to shift to.
Yeah, definitely. I'm in full agreement. This has been awesome. Danny, you've shared some very personal, very close things with us today, and super grateful for that. I know that your work with experience camps is powerful. Your work with Bereave today and just coming out and saying these things out loud, I think can be incredibly impactful for so many in the future. So we really appreciate that. I'm going to ask you for a little plug, even though you might not want to do it, but I'm going to ask if people want to learn more about your speaking or workshops, how can they find you?
Yeah, the best place is my website, DannyGoldbergSpeaks.com. And you could also give me connect with me on LinkedIn. I'm pretty active on there as well.
Cool. Well, man, thank you so much. We're so grateful for knowing you and your generosity in this time and sharing all of these things that you have shared, because it's been years, like you said, but it's a big part of your life, and while it might have gotten easier to talk about, these are still deep personal things. So thank you so much for sharing your story and helping move this this mission at Bereave and your mission forward for the world.
Yes, love what you guys are building at Bereave. I really believe it has the power to change the world and the way people experience grief. And I'm excited for what's ahead for Bereave and all the organizations that get on board.
Amazing. And for anybody who's watching, we will follow up with links to all this, including experience camps, including Danny's website, including his LinkedIn. So if you don't get them today, they will be delivered by the end of the week. And we are going to take a break from Loss Leaders through the holidays. Next up is the 10th of January. And really, really excited. After that couple of weeks, we're going to be back with Ashley Hurd, who is the founder and CEO of Manager Method and co-host of the crazily popular podcast HR Besties. If you haven't listened to HR Besties, go listen to it today. It is hilarious. She's a former general counsel and a head of HR, so a really unique combination. And she's partnered up with two other women and has just a hilarious take. It is not sufficient for work, by the way, in terms of the content. So make sure you don't have kiddos in the car when you're listening, which makes it even a little bit more fun about HR. But Ashley's going to join us to talk through manager training, especially on helping understand what great looks like in the response to tough news. She's also huge on TikTok, so check out Manager Methods on TikTok. It's pretty darn funny stuff. Danny, again, thank you so much. Have a wonderful holiday, everybody, and we'll see you soon.
All right, thanks a lot.